Well, this is kind of fancy. I make a video on Starcraft 2 after defending it. Hello friends and welcome newcomers. My name is Netherless and today I'm ranting. This new Starcraft 2 patch is stupid. You can say what you want about Starcraft 2 and I love this game. I love it to death. My childhood has been based around both Starcraft 1 and 2, and I still think Starcraft 2 is one of the best games of all time in my book. Even if most of my playtime is comprised on the arcade mode where some of my favorite games are on there, but say what you will about Starcraft 2, what I think to be the greatest RTS ever made, this patch was made by a bunch of dumbass motherfuckers. In Blizzard's ancient and unbound wisdom, they decided that instead of making changes to the game themselves, they're just going to hire a bunch of professional players that have zero clue how to design a game in the first place, but they're put in charge on managing the game and either nerfing or buffing or changing things about the game, and thus Blizzard created something called the Balance Council. And let me tell you, this idea is not too bright, friends, not too fucking bright. And that is because the Balance Council is obviously, so incredibly obviously, comprised of a bunch of biased professional players that like to prioritize one race over the other. And all you professional players, don't lie to me, you are biased. And I think this patch is the textbook example to prove that to be the case. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be the arbiter. Pun intended. I'm not going to pretend to be the arbiter of how StarCraft 2 should be played or how it should function. I'm not even that good at StarCraft 2 in the first place. The highest league I've gotten to with Protoss is Gold 2, okay? I'm not a professional player in the slightest, but I will say that this patch has flaws that I feel need to be addressed. Before I get into the problems with the patch itself, I will say there are still some good things about this patch that I like. And I'll address Protoss first because I'm a Protoss main. The new energy overcharge ability from the Nexus that replaces battery overcharge, this is a really good change. Energy overcharge is a lot more requiring of skill than something like battery overcharge, because battery overcharge was kind of a crutch that you had to rely on because of how broken its defensive capabilities were. Battery overcharge on an Archon is probably the most broken thing about it, but now it's been replaced by energy overcharge, which just instantly gives a spellcasting unit more energy. I think this is a good change because you aren't just relying on a crutch defensive ability anymore, but instead you have to actually think about what you want to do with this ability. Do you give it to a Sentry, or do you give it to a High Templar, or perhaps the Oracle, or do you just recharge a shield battery? There's a lot of decisions to be made with energy overcharge, and I like it. The other thing I do like about the patch is the fact that Mothership is no longer abductable, although I will come back to this one later because there's also something about this change that needs to be addressed. For Terrans, I like that you can salvage sensor towers now. That's pretty cool. I like how supply depots become beefier now with the call down extra supply ability, although it's a bit ironic because one of their previous goals was to nerf turtling. The Cyclone's back. We are so back, Terran. The Planetary Fortress's armor got nerfed, so now Zerglings are a bit more viable against them. That's all good. The new Hydralisk ability, Lunge, that's really cool. I like it a lot. And Ultralisk can shove friendly units out of the way now to take the front line. I mean, you're several years too late, but hey, that's a good change. That's all of the things that I do like about this patch. So of course, I'm not just going after the Balance Council for no reason and just blindly hating on this patch without liking something about it, because there are things I like about it. Now, let's get into all of the bad things about this patch. And oh boy, there's a lot of bad. Of course, I'm going to be addressing Protoss first. I love Protoss. They are my heart and soul in StarCraft. But the first thing I want to complain about, why in the bloodiest of all hells does the Disruptor deserve to be nerfed this hard? They literally subtracted 45 damage points from its main ability and only ability, and it cannot one-shot roaches, ravagers, and marauders. This change is one of the dumbest because you're just taking away one of the main uses and appeals of the Disruptor. It was an incredibly powerful unit that you had to use wisely, and it's actually not that hard to avoid a Disruptor shot. A lot of players can avoid Disruptor shots or sacrifice a few units to it. But outright nerfing the Disruptor this hard, I feel like is pretty uncalled for. I see absolutely no reason that the Disruptor should be nerfed. And I know they nerfed the Lurker's health to 190 instead of 200 to compensate for this change, which, by the way, it wasn't addressed in the actual patch that they have kept it, so I was actually under the assumption that the change towards Lurkers was removed. But still, I feel like this change towards the Disruptor is completely uncalled for. It can no longer one-shot Marauders, Roaches, and Ravagers, Not even Hellbats either. I mean, dude, Ravagers literally have less health than Roaches, and they will still survive a Disruptor shot because of this patch. You're telling me if I want to outplay this Bio army, I have to have 2 Disruptors kill the Marauders and Marines than just having 1? I know that Disruptors are really good against Archons, and I know they can still one-shot Ghosts and High Templar and Hydralisk, but a lot of the potential with the Disruptor has been kind of taken away from this patch. Now, another problem is with the Mothership, and I stated earlier that I like the change where the Mothership is no longer abductable, but this also raises a question for me. How are Zerg players going to counter this in the late game? See, I have a Starcraft friend that plays Zerg. He's a Master Zerg actually, so he's really good with Zerg. But he came to me about this patch, and he found himself struggling immensely when fighting Protoss, and it was because of the Mothership. Because the Mothership can no longer be abducted, and because Zerg have to fight at a relatively close range, and because the Mothership has the ability to cloak units for a short amount of time, this kinda gives Protoss an easy advantage against Zerg in the late game. Also, they changed the Mothership's weapon to target more than 1 unit, and that's cool, but the Mothership has a lot of versatility now after they removed the ability for it to be abducted. Because now they can just A-move across the map and destroy several bases with Cloaking Field, Psystorm, Archons, Immortals, Carriers, all of that shit will just wipe out your Zerg bases without competition. And sure, you can use Corruptors to kill the Mothership easy, right? But what about things like Archons and Psystorm? What if they have those under the Mothership? Like, even if you kill the Mothership, the Protoss is still gonna have a bunch of units to screw you up. I feel like this combination of Mothership, Archon, and Templar is actually so powerful now that there is no easy counter to it. Like, yeah, you can have Spore Crawlers and Overseers for detection, but again, Zerg is all about having these overwhelming numbers and fighting up close, and with this new Mothership, it sounds like it's much harder to pull off. Then again, I'm basing this off of a conversation I had with a Master Zerg player friend. Another thing I'll complain about, and yes, I know it'll be fixed, but you know how they reverted the Cyclone back to a previous version it had? Well, turns out, as soon as the patch came out, the Cyclone became broken again, and it does bonus damage for no reason. I know, they're probably going to fix it, but it's really funny how a unit gets reverted to the point that they brought back a notorious bug.
God damn, that was so effortless. I just watched it happen. You wait before the fix. It's broken. Yeah, I think I'm actually done laddering for today. It's fun to troll with it, but I'm not actually gaining anything of value here other than a little bit of entertainment.
There's a couple things with Protoss changes that I also don't agree with. First of all, why is the Tempest range against air being reduced by 1? I don't see any reason to nerf the anti-air range, that just seems very needless. You are literally like nerfing a core thing about the Tempest. Immortals as well. Immortals now fire slightly slower for absolutely no reason. Like, these changes are small, but they kind of matter because you gotta beg the question on why these changes are even a thing. And in the patch notes, they state it's like, because the damage output from Immortals seem to be too high against Zerg, but like, Zerg already has perhaps the easiest counter for Immortals. Zerglings! Zerglings counter Immortals! It's really not that difficult for Zerg players to fight Immortals because, like, the point of Immortals is to counter Roaches and Ravagers because they do bonus damage to armored units. That's why you micro your Roaches to step away from Immortals and let the Zerglings deal with them. This change to make the Immortals fire slightly slower does not make sense, even if it's such a small change. I don't get it. Now the Tempest has its air range reduced from 14 to 13, but it also is cheaper in supply now. It used to cost 5 supply, now it only costs 4. I think that's a fair change, but apparently their goal with changing the Tempest like this is to boost their fighting power with maxed armies and have more micro opportunity, but like, reducing the air range kinda goes against that, I think. They also took away the patch that reduced the damage point of a Tempest. For those of you that don't know, a damage point in StarCraft 2 is like an attack delay before you're able to command a unit with another ability. So I think it's fine that the Tempest supply costs less, but I think the reduced air range is kind of pointless and kind of goes against the original goal of the change. I guess I don't agree with the Stalker change either. Like, you can train it from a gateway 3 seconds faster now, but I feel like this is going to discourage certain plays like Reapers. I know Reapers are faster than Stalkers, but this feels like a nerf to Reaper plays, even if the Stalker is not the best choice against fighting an early game Reaper. We didn't really need the Stalker to be trained quicker from a gateway because we already have Chrono Boost for that. Overall, with Protoss, they're making it out like Protoss is getting buffs, but overall they're just being nerfed. Because everybody hates Protoss, right? Okay, so the big talk about this patch, and I see it a lot around the StarCraft community, and I somewhat agree with them. The Ghost is still probably like one of the best units in the game. When the patch was first being released for public testing, there were 0 changes made to the Ghost, and this is kind of a problem, especially because a lot of things in the other races were pretty much getting nerfed. Disruptor, my beloved. However, in the new patch, they decided to make a change. The Balance Council cooked with this one. They decided to make the Ghost, drumroll please, cost 1 more supply. That's it. That's all we get. This is not a nerf to the Ghost. This is a nerf to Terran supply. If anything, it kind of just highlights how the Ghost is still a really good unit. EMP destroys Protoss and spellcasters throughout all races. Ghost can snipe literally every Zerg unit. They have nukes. They can cloak. Like, the Ghost is just kind of good at everything. I mean, the Ghost is so good that this ESL Reddit copy pasta right here still applies to this day.
To be fair, it's really hard to control this late-game Terran army. You need a hotkey for Ghosts to counter Lurkers, Ghosts to counter Hydras, Ghosts to counter Broodlords, Ghosts to counter Ultras, Ghosts to counter Vipers, Ghosts to EMP Infestors, Ghosts to nuke economy and Ghosts to snipe detection so your Ghosts don't die.
Like, I don't think there's any downsides to using Ghosts. They are just good at everything. The bottom line is, the Ghost needs some kind of nerf, even if it's very minuscule. If the Disruptor is going to be nerfed this hard, and if Queens are going to be slightly more expensive, as well as having Ultralisk take the front line by pushing friendly units out of the way, because, you know, that's a good thing when Ghosts can literally just snipe them several times over and nearly instantly kill them. Yeah, I think the Ghost needs a bit of a nerf. Not a huge one, but it needs some sort of nerf. Adding 1 supply to its cost doesn't really nerf it in the slightest. Because even with the Ghost being slightly more expensive in supply, it still functions all the same, and it's still one of the best units in the game. What's even more insulting is the change to Colossus alongside the Ghost barely being touched. The change to the Colossus is that it now has less shields, but more health. As Protoss, you cannot heal health points by yourself. As soon as a unit or a building from Protoss loses HP, it's gone forever. That's the whole point of Protoss having shields. But because the Ghost hasn't been nerfed, and now the Colossus has less shields, this incredibly racist ability that the Ghost has can just easily take away all of the Colossus's shields, and any health depleted from that Colossus is just going to be gone forever.
Also, the Ghost nerf, of course. The wording here I love. We have heard major concerns from multiple professional Terran players about the Ghost nerf, and there wasn't full alignment among the Balance Council members regarding this change. However, we also believe that proceeding with this change was desired by the community. So we'd like to move forward with the Ghost supply nerf, while carefully monitoring its effects. So if it's fucked up, whose fault is it? Community. We're gonna carefully monitor. You can't just say carefully monitor every time. We both know that means not do shit for 6 months. This adjustment may also slightly help in focus firing the unit in Zerg versus Protoss, where Abduct is no longer a counter. Like, I read that, I'm like, You're really gonna say that focus firing the mothership was a real, like, any sort of, It's like, you need to come up with a positive. Zergs can now focus fire the mothership better. Okay. So, the issue was the mothership and not the 12 Templar underneath the mothership, right? Okay.
As for the Zerg, I think most of the changes to Zerg are pretty fine. I like the new Hydralisk ability a lot. However, I don't agree with a particular change they made, specifically with the hatchery and queen's costs. I think Artosis put it best when he was talking about the beta versions of the patch.
Queen, mineral costs increased from 150 to 175. Amazing. Amazing. Best change so far. Hatchery, mineral costs decreased from 300 to 275. Here's the honest truth, right? Zerg has won in the last however many years so many tournaments. They have won so much. The domination has been so thorough that you could have taken all of this out and just done this, and I'd be like, this is one of the best patches I've ever seen. One of the best patches I've ever seen. It's the most questionable for Protoss, right? Without doubt, it's the most questionable for Protoss, which is by far the least winning race. By far. I'm honestly, like, I like a lot of the changes, but this is fucking insane. This is insane. Like, again, you could remove all these and just do this one, and the patch is so much better. It's so much better. Everyone knows the queen is too much. It does too much for Zerg. Right? Immortals lose 10% attack speed. And this is all that happens to Zerg right here. And everything else gets buffed. It's shocking. It's shocking.
I'm on the exact same boat, where I think if the only balance patch that Zerg got was the fact that queens were slightly more expensive, it would literally be the best patch ever. Queens are already a really good unit, and I do think making them slightly more expensive is a good change as well. But they also wanted to compensate for this change by making hatcheries 25 minerals cheaper, and it's like, why? Hatcheries are literally the most cheap base structure in the game. They already costed 100 minerals less than the command center and Nexus. Now they are 125 minerals cheaper than a command center and Nexus. This is literally just going to encourage Zerg players to expand a lot more frequently, and they already did that without the hatchery being this cheap. Again, I feel like the right approach would have been to just leave the hatchery alone in this, but keep the change to queens. Queens are an extremely good unit, and making them cost 25 more minerals is a good idea, but I don't think hatcheries being cheaper is necessary at all, because they were already the cheapest base structure in the game. Oh, and another thing. I don't know if this is intentional, but why are there 3 old maps in the map pool for this new patch? I'm hoping it's not intentional, but I found it odd that these 3 old maps were just there. The map pool for this season isn't exactly good either, as a lot of the maps either have ridiculous choke points and rush zones, or they are just very turtley maps in nature, and we all know that fighting turtles can get pretty fucking boring. The map called El Dorado has a literal fucking wall of rocks and minerals, so it's literally a turtle player's daydream. I don't like the map pool, straight up. Also, another big problem that I've been made aware of this because of winter is that old replays for the old version of the game are completely broken and you can't play them. Normally, if you wanted to look at a replay from an old version of the game would prompt you and ask if you were sure to load this, because it would boot you out of Blizzard services and load up the older version of the game. But now, because of this new patch, you are completely unable to load up old replays from old versions of the game, and I am hoping at some point this will get fixed, because this is unacceptable. So overall, I hope I made some sense in my little rant, but I really don't like this change. I especially don't like how some changes were proposed, like the Liberator having more radius, or the Broodlords making a huge comeback with Infestors.
I don't know how you're supposed to take good fights on this map like this. I actually don't know. Why was the Broodlord buffed? Because we hate Starcraft? I don't actually know the answer. Because we have to. Because we were too bitch, we're just too bitch made to nerf the ghost. That's it. That's the answer. The answer is the game had to become pure trash so that the ghost could stay the way that it was. That's it. That is the answer to the question. That's it. This is just when you've played enough StarCraft and seen enough metas, you just know that this is actually going to be the way it works out. Just like this. Yeah, GG. It's going to be just like this. We're going to do this again. We're going to go back to this. This is going to be the thing that everyone wants to do again. And then I just don't like... This is just the way it's going to be. We just can't nerf the ghost. So we have to ruin the game.
I actually just straight up don't like this patch. This isn't a fun patch. I never had fun with any of my games. None of my games on the new patch were fun. Mainly because of the map pool being terrible, but it also has to do with some of the changes made, especially towards Protoss. Like, I'm fully convinced the Balance Council hates Protoss. They're just sprinkling in some slight buffs, but overall the race is getting straight up nerfed. Some of the changes I do like, most of them I don't, period. But like I said earlier, I'm not a professional player. I'll own up to it and say that I suck dick at StarCraft. And I don't want anybody to hold my opinion as gospel, but these are my honest thoughts about the new patch. I want to know what y'all think. Do y'all agree with me? Do you have your own ideas to patch this game? Or am I just retarded? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Anyways, I'm Netherless. This was my rant. Bye-bye.